ask anybody's question but yours. You're an idiot. And really a disloyal person.
Congratulations, you are going on an official visit to Syracuse, kind of like half of the transfer portal right now.
Seems like it's a busy time up on the hill, folks.
Indeed, the transfer portal closed on Friday, April 25th, and people are still visiting Syracuse because, of course, the transfer portal only closes to those who are entering. You can still commit to other schools, as we saw this weekend and this past week as well. Welcome, everyone, to the Disloyal Idiots podcast here on the Fans First Sports Network. Christian Guzman here alongside Steve Haller. And just to go through the usual thing that we go through on this podcast, where holy crap, that happened this week. The news that, first of all, Syracuse was hosting Steve Angeli, transfer quarterback, dropped on Monday.
The so that happened. And then the news that they are hosting every O-lineman in the portal happened over the last couple of days.
Trickled through quickly.
In between those two things, there was more in, out, around the portal than you can possibly imagine, including 2 wideouts that committed.
This is how you know so much has happened that I'm not sure.
That sounds about right. Let me pull that up then in the wonderful world of 24/7.
So what we don't have any wideouts Syracuse doesn't have any wideouts committed yet. I believe there's only 2 people who have officially committed to Syracuse this past week. Both of them are very key to talk about, which is what we will start off this podcast with. We might as well start it off with the biggest name of them all, which I alluded to earlier, is that Notre Dame quarterback Steve Angeli is transferring to Syracuse. If the name sounds familiar, he's been Riley Leonard's backup at Notre Dame for the past couple of seasons, and notably got some good playing time under Notre Dame in the first of all the Sun Bowl in 2024, when he was Notre Dame's starting quarterback because Sam Hartman was foregoing that bowl game to get drafted in the NFL draft. And this past year, Riley Leonard got hurt for a drive or two. I think it was just one drive in Penn State CFP game, and Angeli had to orchestrate a drive, and essentially a 2-minute drive, to get points for Notre Dame in a game. Was it the Penn State game, I want to say?
I think so.
Yes. So Angeli has gotten some time in the spotlight as well, albeit still as a backup.
You know how crazy it is?
Yes.
You said there were 2 commits. There have been 3. 2 on the defensive side, 1 on the offensive side.
This is how you know.
Yeah. So prior to Angeli, which slightly overshadowed by Angeli, was the commitment of Gary Bryant III, a linebacker from South Dakota. Was he South Dakota or South Dakota State?
I believe it was South Dakota.
But a highly touted transfer, basically coming up a level. And, I mean, the deal got closed. So he's going to be wearing orange in a position that we needed some bodies.
And Fran Brown, when the whole Trevor Pena saga was happening, openly stated in an interview with Stephen Fonte and Paulie Scaliba on Q Sports Talk Orange Nation, said that he was looking for a quarterback and a linebacker in a transfer portal still.
Yeah.
And he certainly got them.
Yes, he got them. And then he, yesterday, in the middle of the NFL draft, got an additional bit of help in the guise of someone who's been highly touted in the Syracuse circles for years. I still remember when he was originally recruited, went to Michigan. George Rooks, a legacy D lineman. His dad played in the early 90s for Syracuse, has committed as a transfer from BC. I believe he has 2 years left.
That is correct.
He originally played his first 2 years of college at Michigan, then transferred to BC, and is now coming to continue his dad's legacy, I guess.
So those are the 3 that have committed to Syracuse so far in this spring transfer window. And honestly, we should spend a good amount talking about all three. And like I said, we should start with Angeli because quarterbacks are the one that drive everything right now.
Yeah.
Angeli, again, mainly a backup at Notre Dame. He was in a quarterback battle this year at Notre Dame for the starting spot. It was a three-way battle between two other former four-star recruits as well. Angeli is a four-star recruit himself, but only by ESPN's rankings. Every other rating service had Angeli as a three-star. And if from all intents and purposes, it looks like Angeli did not win out that quarterback battle because he obviously entered the portal.
Right. If he did and then entered the portal, we've got some other weird questions.
Yes, exactly. So in his Notre Dame career, 722 yards thrown, 10 touchdowns. I believe only one interception as well in his Notre Dame career. The big thing about Angeli as well, if you want to continue to find Syracuse ties, is that he is a New Jersey kid and went to Bergen Catholic High School. If that name sounds familiar, former Orange DBs and Jaden Bellamy and Jaden Gould were almost said school. Nunzio Campanelli, Angeli's new quarterbacks coach, was the head coach of that program for a long time. His brother is the current head coach and was the head coach for Angeli at Bergen Catholic.
Yep. So that Jersey pipeline coming in handy once again.
And the big thing, this is when I wrote initially about Angeli visiting Syracuse, is that when you now start to think about it a little bit as well, Angeli all of a sudden becomes the most experienced quarterback in the Syracuse quarterback room.
Yeah, almost
not just in terms of playing time, because that's that I think you could assume already. It's also in terms of just years. Angeli's going to come in as, I believe, a redshirt junior. Everyone else, so Angeli will be a redshirt junior. Ricky Collins is a redshirt sophomore. Everyone else in the quarterback room is either a freshman or redshirt freshman.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy that if it wasn't for Angeli, we would have, well, for one, blooded Collins and had a good bit of time with him after, and we may still, that is still technically up for grabs. My brain says you don't bring in Angeli in this window and piss Collins off if you don't think he's good enough to make an impact.
Indeed, and for all intents and purposes, it seems like we're headed for another quarterback battle in the summer. And knowing Fran, like he said in this past spring practice window, he's going to look to name a starter quickly. Especially when you see how Fran worked with the team with Kyle McCord. He wants his quarterback to be essentially another coach on the team.
Right.
It's a guy who essentially speaks for the coaching staff and, runs a lot of the team. And having someone who's been around football for a long time can certainly help with that as well. But then also choosing a starting quarterback quickly will help with that as well, so that people know who they're listening to, who to follow, et cetera, et cetera. And that person can also get comfortable in that role as well. So it looks like, for all intents and purposes, a very interesting August is about to come up before Syracuse shuttles on down to Atlanta.
Yeah, and that Tennessee now has their quarterback, so that's going to be everything in general is just going to be a very interesting first week of the year for a lot of these schools, I think.
It's going to be a lot different of a Syracuse-Tennessee game than I think a lot of us were expecting for many different reasons.
Yeah, and not in any better or worse way, just a lot of the storylines have completely shifted.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of roster upheaval for both teams. Syracuse necessarily because in general they were expecting it, and then some unexpected departures as well, which we'll get to. And in terms of Tennessee's roster, definitely unexpected departures.
Yeah, that whole saga, it still boggles my mind. But that's well, I'm not sure what you had on the full rundown, but if we're getting into any of the rulings on the transfer portal and what may happen moving forward, that may shut down some of why Nico decided to, or that may have been a good reason why Nico decided to take off when he did.
We can get into that later. It wasn't my intention, but it's definitely something that should be brought up. Just because, unfortunately, for newsflash for people who couldn't tell, Steve and I are not legal experts.
No.
So it's going to be hard for us to really explain all the nuts and bolts and make opinions on what's going to happen in the current NCAA House rulings and the settlements that may or may not happen. So all we can do is give you the facts really and see and just wait and see what happens, because if anyone let other smarter people than us help sort that out.
Absolutely.
The big thing is now, Syracuse's roster is starting to take shape, and in my opinion, you don't make this move either unless you're not just looking for someone to compete as well for the quarterback position. You're looking for someone who is potentially going to start for you.
Yeah.
And I think right now the favor screws and jelly. If we're talking right now about who's your day one starter, obviously we won't know, but I think if I was picking a day one starter right now for Syracuse, I'd probably pick Angeli.
Just on how it all ran out. Now, at the same time, you don't bring him in without telling Collins. Like, for one, there's been a ton of chatter on various things. The way Fran Brown has approached everything, I guarantee, and I will eat my head if we find out otherwise, that at some point he told Ricky Collins, hey, I'm bringing another quarterback into this room. You are the current starter. You can maintain that if, you perform, but don't think I'm going to sit idle on it. And he publicly stated he was bringing in another quarterback.
The big thing is, even if Angeli doesn't start, at the very least, you feel comfortable about a backup for Syracuse.
Right.
And last year was a big exception for Syracuse in terms of a quarterback playing every single game.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that's the other thing is, if Angeli isn't the starter, that means Collins improved to the point where he beat out a kid we've seen perform at this level.
Exactly. And even in tougher situations.
Right. So even if Angeli doesn't start, that bodes well for us.
Exactly. And then, like I said, you still have a capable backup this year.
Yeah.
Because you're not rolling with a backup that's a freshman / redshirt freshman.
Mm-hmm.
As high as some people might be on Jakari Williams, I don't think people want to necessarily throw him into that situation just yet.
No, that usually you throw somebody like that into that kind of situation, and it usually ends either it turns very binary. Yes. It either goes really well or it just wrecks the kid's career, and we've seen that a couple of times over the years at Syracuse.
Because Kevin brought up the great point in our News Magician Slack of how poorly backup quarterbacks have gone for Syracuse in the past.
We went down through quite a list.
It goes all the way back to my freshman year.
It goes all the way back to the site's namesake.
It does. It does.
And probably beyond.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, Steve can rattle off a couple of more. My first memories, of course, were in my freshman year in 2014, Terrell Hunt getting suspended for a game, then getting hurt, and then the next year getting hurt. So in 2014, you were rolling out really a trio of quarterbacks of Austin Wilson, AJ Long, and Mitch Kimball.
Yeah, that was a year.
And that was a year.
What else did we have? We had the Officer Mahoney year.
We had an Officer Mahoney year. Mm-hmm. Of course, we have the 2020 year with Rex Culpepper playing the majority of games.
Yep. Yeah. 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 The only backup we've had that's worked out in the past 20 years has been DeVito.
Yeah.
And then we decided to can him.
Mm-hmm. And then you could technically say also Dungy.
Yeah.
Because Dungy wasn't Syracuse's starter to begin 2015.
Who was?
It was Terrell Hunt. And then he got injured in the second quarter of that game.
Yep.
And then Dungy came in.
All right. Yep.
And then had one of his 50 concussions 3 games later.
Right. Yeah. Wow. It's been a ride.
It has been.
This, like, and especially in that time frame since you kind of got brought into the fold here. There was a lot of stupid back before then, but
it dates back to my first year on Syracuse's campus in 2014. A lot of stupid has happened since there, because 2013 was a relatively clean year with Hunt as well.
Right.
2014 is when we really start to take a nosedive.
I mean, so which was Schaefer's first year?
13.
Okay,
that was the Texas Bowl with Hunt.
Right.
Because 12 is Nassib's last year with Marone.
Oh, that was a year.
Yeah.
No, I think it was Nassib's freshman year.
Which was
had
10.
Andrew Robinson and that whole mess. Cam Dantley. Dantley, you would have only known Cam Dantley as or was he before? Did he end before your time?
Before my time.
I was going to say most people might know him as a tight end, but alas.
Again, what was Nassib's freshman year? Was it 10?
2008.
It was 2008. Okay.
Yep.
Because I know 2009 is everyone's favorite year as for Syracuse quarterbacking.
Oh, 2009 was
a basketball player.
Oh, that was the Polish year.
Yes.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a thing.
That was a thing.
Yep. Yeah, NASA Charlie. Oh, yep.
Charlie Loeb.
Ridiculously good-looking Charlie Loeb.
Oh my God, that's a name I haven't heard in a while either.
Yep. 2010. Sorry, I'm just going through the roster because this is kind of fun. Mm-hmm. Those are seniors. That's not the way you sort things. Johnny Miller, Nassib, John Kinder. Remember that name?
I do not at all.
Oh boy. So Kinder was a freshman in 2010. He didn't make it too long. I think maybe sophomore or junior year transferred. Hunt came in. Nassib's senior year. Yeah. Okay. That's fun. 2006. We don't have positions? No, we do.
Exactly.
Yeah. Here's one for you. That was Perry Patterson's senior year.
Holy moly.
Perry Patterson, Andrew Robinson, Matt Hale, and Cam Dantley were the QB room.
Going back and looking at some of these names on my first year on the Hill in 2014 is a thing as well.
What was that?
2014. Of course, you only have 4 quarterbacks on the roster, and I've named them all: in Terrell Hunt, Austin Wilson, AJ Long, and Mitch Kimball.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a thing. For you, Steve, I know to pump up the offensive line talk. That was the senior year of Sean Hickey.
Okay.
You might remember good center Jason Emmerich also, I believe.
Yep.
On that team. This is the freshman year of Zaire Franklin.
All right.
This is the senior year of Cam Lynch.
Okay.
The junior year of Darrell Eskridge.
I forgot you had Amari Palmer, Rob Trudeau, Aaron Roberts.
You have Irv Phillips as a running back instead of a wide receiver.
Oh, there you go.
Your wide receiver room of 1-2 punch of Prince Tyson Gully and Adonis Amin Moore.
Yep. Remember
that. You're the wide receivers of Ashton Boyle, freshman Steve Ishmael, sophomore Grizzly Esteem.
You remember how hyped he was?
Yes.
Hindsight.
Exactly.
Yeah. That was
a lot a lot of classic names. This is a freshman Jamal Custis here as well.
The senior year of Heisman frontrunner Riley Dixon.
Yeah, not the redshirt senior year though, because that comes the following year.
It's true. Chauncey Schism. Wow. Yeah, there's some names.
All that to say, it's important to have backups.
It is.
You know, it's also important to have backups, or even starters if you want. The offensive line.
Yeah, and it seems like Fran is taking that to heart.
We've already had one offensive line come in already this year in this area, I should say, in Austin Collins from Louisville. And Steve, there's a lot of offensive linemen that have been visiting Syracuse.
Yeah, and I'm not going to complain in any way, shape, or form. Most recently, Zach Rice, who's a tackle from UNC, is on campus or scheduled? What was that? He's on campus today, or
yeah, today. Yeah, and I think he's visiting through Tuesday, even potentially as well.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's a big boy too.
He is a very, very big boy.
304. Former 5-star recruit. So if we can bring that in, I'm not going to complain.
And now I know a lot of people are also going to be thinking about Trevor Pena, who unfortunately for Syracuse fans committed to Penn State out of the transfer portal, which I know will make a lot of Syracuse fans a little bit salty. But Syracuse has been looking at wide receivers to replenish that void left by Pena. The first one is Florida State transfer Hakeem Williams, who is reportedly down to Pitt, Syracuse, and one other team that I'm forgetting. He canceled a visit to Miami, so he is down to 3 schools now, and he visited Syracuse already.
Hold on. Syracuse is still live, and he canceled a visit to Miami.
He will not visit Miami. His final 3 schools are Colorado, Pitt, and Syracuse.
What world are we in?
Yes.
Like, if nothing else, dude, just take the free trip to Miami.
The other wide receiver that is the more notable one for reasons is Jonte Cook, excuse me, former Texas and Washington wide receiver. On 3 have logged a prediction that Cook will commit to Syracuse.
Yeah, and he was a high 4-star, was he a high 3-star recruit in high school?
I don't remember, but he had a pretty prolific Texas career, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's since then it's been pretty tumultuous for off the field stuff.
Exactly.
So we'll see how that goes if he ends up committing, and if that commitment leads to any questions, concerns, anything like that around the off the field stuff. We'll see how it all pans out, but I guarantee if we've seen what we've seen out of Fran, that he's done his homework. So
absolutely. He's definitely done his homework on the defensive side of the ball as well, of course, where Fran made his bread and butter. And Steve mentioned one of the big ones in Gary Bryant, the South Dakota linebacker, who I believe was either their leading or second leading tackler on the team with over 100 tackles this past season, and is definitely someone that Syracuse needs in a position where, as we've talked about, not a lot of depth right now.
Yeah, he was MVC second team last year, 102 tackles, 3 pass deflections, 2 picks, 1 forced fumble. He was looked at. He had visits with the Orange, USC, Cal, and West Virginia. So pretty solid offer list. 6'1", 230. Why not?
Yeah, he'll have 2 years left, and that's also important again for Syracuse to just have more depth in that room. Even if Syracuse does run back the 4-2-5 that it ran for the majority of the year last year,
I think they can.
Yeah, it doesn't look like, especially with the people they've lost on the defensive line.
Yeah, although Rooks coming in definitely helps.
Yeah, and that's who we're getting to next is George Rooks, and I think that's the name again. Like Steve said, I think a lot of Syracuse fans are going to be familiar with, not just because he is a legacy recruit, but because Syracuse, beforehand, was very heavily interested in Rooks during his initial recruitment out of high school.
Yeah, and in his transfer from Michigan last year.
Exactly, yeah.
No, he all signs point to this being a very good pickup for the Orange. I mean, to be fair, anything that takes BC down a notch and brings us up a notch definitely doesn't hurt.
Absolutely, and Rooks has been a starter for BC the past 2 years.
Yep.
So, it's important that he's got that starting experience. Good frame as well, 6'5", 285. That's exactly what you want.
Yep. Seems like a good space taker. 26 tackles, DTs are not gonna rack that up unless you're Warren Sapp. 3 tackles and a pass breakup in a game. Oh no, never mind. Reading the wrong stat line. He tackled us 3 times.
Oh, wonderful. Congratulations.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's definitely a solid pickup. 6'5", 282. Another Jersey kid. So why not? Just add some more to the pile.
Yeah, and it feels like, especially from what we've seen in terms of the people who are coming to Syracuse, it looks like the last bit of business before Fran, quote unquote, closes up shop for the summer, even though that's probably not going to happen in Syracuse world right now, is shoring up and continuing to find more depth on that offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, if you can shore up the trenches, you seem to have solidified your QB room. Running back wasn't a problem. Wide out, there's enough depth, but we added more. Like, I think dare I say, we're in some good. We're in a good spot.
I think we're in a better spot than we expected to be in as Syracuse fans.
Yes. I think my that statement is more in relation to what we had kind of said the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, it definitely feels like, it feels like a lot of this with Fran is that there's sometimes a doom and gloom dip, but things quickly shoot back up in a positive direction for Syracuse after maybe some news or adversity hits the program.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Which again, I think is very, very important for Syracuse, for Fran, and just in general on how he's run this program to he continuously find ways to improve and just never stop, essentially.
No, and that's definitely something to take away from all this is the motor on this staff is just unheard of. Like I can't wrap my head around. They don't stop. They don't. Nothing is ever over.
Yeah, and it goes back to something that I kept on preaching last year, which is Syracuse in general. We'd be having a lot more conversations about people interested in Syracuse in terms of recruits, visits, things, whatnot, in more detail in previous editions of Syracuse football before Fran. But now we can really only have a shallow overview, just mainly because there's so many things that happen in Syracuse football.
What you mean, like the fact that we had 2 Florida State starters transfer visit last week?
Exactly.
Like we had a starting offensive guard from Florida State visit Syracuse.
Yeah,
what?
Exactly. You know what? Maybe some of those guys were looking to check out what Syracuse fans were wearing from Home Field Apparel.
It could be.
Yeah, and Home Field Apparel is the sponsor of this podcast here, the Disloyal Idiots podcast on the Fans First Sports Network. It's your one-stop shop place for all your favorite retro Syracuse comfy gear. It's the comfiest apparel that you could possibly ever own if you're a Syracuse fan. And you can get either the Syracuse bomber jacket that they will eventually restock, hopefully, that I have, and one of the many hats that Steve's has and enjoys from Home Field Apparel, or any other school that they may sponsor. And they sponsor and partner with a lot of schools, or even just get their general court collection, which is also a delight to wear. day in and day out. You can go to Home Field Apparel right now and you use the code NUNES24. That's NUNES24, and you'll get 15% off your very first purchase at homefieldapparel.com.
I would love for it to be my first purchase again, but it is nowhere near that.
My first purchase was the bomber jacket, and I was very, very happy with said purchase.
Oh, absolutely.
Homefieldapparel.com. Once again, the code NUNES24 for 15% off your very first order at homefieldapparel.com. A lot of the football news I felt like got lost this week, mainly because the NFL draft happened, and it was one of the weirdest NFL drafts we've ever seen in our lives.
Yeah, there were a couple wonky things that went down, including potential first round picks being picked in the 5th, was it?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was a moment there where I holistically believed that Kyle McCord was going to get picked before Shedeur.
I legitimately thought it for a bit.
McCord ends up going and falling to the 6th round. He was the second player taken out of Syracuse. The first one was Arondé Gadsden. He went in the 5th to the Chargers. And then LaQuint Allen and Fidel Diggs went in the 7th round to the Jaguars and the Saints, respectively. So it's 4 players taken from Syracuse in the draft this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I can't even think of the last time 4 players were taken in the draft.
I am about to tell you right now, because the last time 4 players were taken from Syracuse in the NFL draft was 2006.
Okay. Oh, geez. Who were those 4 players?
You have a 3rd round pick to the Steelers, a 5th round pick to the Falcons, and then 2 7th round picks, 1 to the Jaguars and 1 to the Ravens.
Was Adam Terry one of them?
Adam Terry was the year before and the only pick in the 2005 draft for Syracuse.
That was Damian Rhodes' year?
Damian Rhodes is much earlier, I think.
Wasn't he on 2005?
No, I don't think he was even drafted.
No, he wasn't drafted. I'm trying to figure. I'm
trying
to wrap my head around which roster I'm thinking.
I couldn't tell you.
If it's around as old as I am, Steve Gregory would have been one of them to the Chargers.
Steve Gregory is not one of them.
Oh, maybe he just got picked up.
Steve Gregory was an undrafted player who signed with the Chargers,
who actually ended up playing longer than any of the people that were drafted, I'd assume. Were any of them an offensive lineman?
None of them were. Yes, one of them was an offensive lineman. It was 1 offensive lineman and 3 defensive players.
Quinn Ojanaka?
He was the offensive lineman taken in the 5th round to the Falcons.
So all defensive players from there?
All defensive players from here on out in this impromptu trivia session with Steve.
Wow. Art Jones?
Art Jones is 2010.
So was he?
Yeah, you were 4 years too late or too early for Art Jones.
Huh. Oh, I know he was on that team. I have no idea.
So in the 3rd round with the 83rd pick of the draft, Anthony Smith went to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And in the 7th round to the Jaguars defensive end, James Whitechie went to the Jaguars. And then in the 7th, the 219th pick in the 7th round, the Baltimore Ravens selected linebacker Ryan Lacasse.
Okay, Lacasse was going to be on the short list, but yeah, didn't come to me. Yeah, wow.
That was the last time.
Yeah, all right.
That was the last time That was the last time 4 Syracuse players got taken in the NFL draft. It also happened in 2001. And then in 1998, 5 players were taken in the draft.
Okay. I'm not going to go back to that one.
The notable picks in that pick in 2001, first rounder Will Allen to the Giants.
Yep.
And then in 1998, 2 first rounders in Tebucky Jones and Donovan Darius.
Right. And I think Kevin Johnson was drafted in that too.
Kevin Johnson was the year after in '99.
I thought Kevin Johnson was the. Oh.
Yeah. 99 was arguably Syracuse's most successful draft of the modern era. Because that's
that would have been McNabb and
it's McNabb, Johnson, and then Rob Conrad in the second round as well.
So was Harrison was 97?
Harrison was 96.
Oh.
Yes.
My brain hurts.
Well, all you have to know for this year is 5, 6, and 2 7s around to Gadsden to the Chargers, McCord to the Eagles, Allen to the Jaguars, and Diggs to the Saints.
Yeah. Now, on top of that, we did talk about Steve Gregory getting picked up as an undrafted free agent and making a damn good career out of it. Similarly, we had a ton of undrafted free agents picked up almost immediately after the draft. Both Justin Barron and Cinco signed with the Cowboys. So we'll see how that goes. I don't feel like anybody signing with the Cowboys ever ends well, but that's just me. Jackson Meeks ended up with the Lions. Then I just saw the tweet on the
on our site.
On the thing. Apparently he also got a $20,000 signing bonus and $200,000 guaranteed. Like, sure, why not?
Which is very good for UDFA.
Yeah, like, okay.
Yeah.
Go get that bag, Jackson.
Yes.
Wax and Savion Washington are with the Chargers, joining Gadsden there. And then Clarence Lewis signed on with the Tennessee Titans. So that should be that's going to be a lot of orange potentially in the NFL again.
Exactly. The big one, you've got 3 Syracuse players on the Chargers with Gadsden in the 5th round and Wax in Washington as undrafted free agents. Gadsden has a real chance to make a splash on the Chargers roster. They picked up Tyler Conklin from the Jets in free agency this past offseason. But other than that, from what I can tell, don't have another tight end on the roster.
Antonio Gates isn't walking back in the door there?
Contrary to popular belief, no.
Fair enough. So
he has a very good chance to make a splash there, especially since, speaking as Jets fan, Tyler Conklin didn't really make the splash that I think a lot of Jets fans would have liked them to make.
Right.
So Gadsden has a very good chance to make that roster and also eventually maybe play some significant minutes for the Chargers down the road.
No, he's got the body, he's got the size, and he's got the ability to find a weird seam.
There could be worse players to receive the a ball from than Justin Herbert.
Fair.
So he'll have a very nice time with that. Obviously, McCord's situation is a little bit iffy. Since you do have some guy named Jalen Hurts in front of him, who doesn't look like he'll be,
Yeah, he's not going anywhere, but it could be, in all honesty, it could be a very good spot for him if he can win that number 2 spot to sit and learn behind Hurts at his, hometown club. Like, pull a DeVito, go hang out with your parents for a year, make some bank, and do what you're doing.
Absolutely. And McCord is a guy who I think, just based on his demeanor and how he works, if he doesn't make it as a starter, could easily stick in the league for a long time as a backup.
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
Since you have to have there's a reason why there are so many guys who stay in the league for a long time as a backup, because you have to have a really specific mindset to be a backup in the league.
Yeah. No, and he's got the head for it, and it seems like that's always a lot of the thing is that your backup, you want to be almost like he was at Syracuse, another set of coaching eyes.
Yeah. For Allen, I think it's going to be a little bit tougher for him to unfortunately make the roster. or just make a big impact. There seems to be a big long jam at running back for Jacksonville. He could maybe, if Jacksonville doesn't like Parker Washington or Tank Bigsby as one of the returners, could make it there as a return guy.
Yeah.
But at running back, there's a big long jam behind ETN, Bigsby, Michelle Tutin, Keelan Robertson. There's a lot of names to get through for Allen in order to, make an impact in the running back room. But people forget that Allen started his Syracuse career as a return guy. So
right. It's just that over his career, we ended up with so many other return guys.
Coincidentally enough, for Fadil Diggs, ESPN's depth chart has him listed as a wide linebacker.
Yeah, I mean, he did show his versatility a bit this year.
Mm-hmm. But, I know most people think of Diggs as an edge.
Right.
There's worse edges to learn from than Cameron Jordan, Kalen Saunders, and Brian Brise.
Yeah. Oh.
And even then, the wide linebackers for the Saints and Carl Granderson and Demario Davis, there's worse linebackers to learn from. And then also Chase Young when he's healthy.
Right.
There's worse linebackers to learn from.
Yeah, I had some Brian Brise flashbacks when you mentioned that.
Yeah. So that's how Diggs, shuffles up on the Saints. Interesting draft for Syracuse. I think it feels like Gadsden has the best route to really make a big impact out of this draft group.
Yeah, I could see that. And I think that's what we thought going in too. Yeah. So, I'm glad he ended up going to a spot where he really could.
Yeah. Maybe if McCord goes somewhere else, it might be different for him as well.
Yeah.
I know, and the two Steeler fans that we know probably would have loved that. Instead, they take Will Howard, and the great Chris Carlson tweet, Howard and McCord will forever still be linked.
Yep. And that was that would have been even more icing on the cake if he ended up going in front of Shadur.
Yeah, it would have been. It'd have been really, really funny.
Well, do we have to mention the thing we have to mention?
We do. I'll mention one thing before we have to mention the thing we have to mention. For the people who want their Syracuse basketball news, Kyan Anthony was named the Jordan Brand Classic MVP. He was guarded a few times by Sadiq White in those games, which is really, really funny to see.
Yeah. So hopefully more upside coming to the Hill for the winter sports.
Exactly.
Apparently the spring sports less good.
Yep. If you're also interested in some Syracuse basketball news, Sam Fetterman has done a great job on our site recently, starting to break down what the incoming transfers for Syracuse bring, with clips and supporting evidence. He's already got 2 out on William Kyle and Nate Kings. I'm expecting the Nate George one to come very shortly. Yeah. So be on the lookout on newsmagician.com for that.
Yeah, that should it's been good so far, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the series.
You know what's also been interesting? The Thing.
Hey, by the way, nice call on the record setter.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate that.
I figured I'd continue to do happy things before we get into the vegetables. But
yeah, again, for those who don't know, I call Cornell lacrosse, and very, very honored to be able to call CJ Kirst's record-breaking goal to become the NCAA Division I men's lacrosse all-time leading goal scorer in a career.
Yeah, it's funny. We had a get together with a couple of people, and Kevin sent the tweet in the Slack, and I pulled it up, and my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I know him."
It's awesome that
it's Christian.
It obviously made it through all the lacrosse media channels,
but
it was cool that the main ESPN social media accounts tweeted that out.
Nice.
Yeah, which is the one that Kevin linked, which was the tweet from the main ESPN social media account on X, which was awesome.
Can't do much better than getting that for that for pub.
You can do much better than what Syracuse attempted to show that day as well.
Oh yeah, you can.
I have an off-stream story that I'll tell you about that after this, which is going to be more entertaining than what Syracuse unfortunately showed for 49 minutes, for 47 minutes and 30 seconds of that game.
Yeah, that was in the I don't know. So
or no, 57 minutes. I'm math.
Right. For anyone who didn't see it, Syracuse lost to UNC, I believe 14-12 this weekend to finish the regular season. In the Dome, comeback attempt falls short, and that's that.
Yeah, there's a lot to that story, though.
There is. I'm going with the ELI 5, like Cliff Notes version.
Yeah, exactly. The big story, if you're wondering why Syracuse lost this game, is that Syracuse just didn't have the ball. I mean, John Mullen has been great this entire year, but he was going up against someone better, which I know for people is hard to believe. But Brady Wambach for UNC was absolutely incredible. For those who are thinking Wambach, yes, there is a relation.
I was literally going to ask that.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So, Brady just absolutely dominated Mullen the entire game until that fourth quarter comeback attempt.
Yep.
Which we'll also get to in a bit as well. But Syracuse just didn't have the ball. There were times where UNC was doubling up Syracuse shots. UNC set a new season high in shots in that game with 59. Syracuse only had 40, and many of those 40 came at the end of the fourth when Syracuse started to make its comeback.
Right. Go figure. You try and put the ball near the net and you put it in it.
Yeah. I mean, Dom Petromola, obviously, Dave's son, and the reason why Dave is at UNC. Dom Petromola shot the ball 20 times.
Yeah, that'll do it.
He started the game shooting 0 of 9 and then proceeded to score 6 goals.
Yeah. That's kind of regression to the mean, but I think it went a little too far the other way.
Exactly. You don't blame this on Jimmy McCool. He faced every shot under the sun and ended with, I believe, and ended with a positive save percentage of over 50%.
I mean, yeah, that's to get peppered that many times and still only give up 14.
Yeah.
More power to him.
The other thing that didn't go well for Syracuse, they failed 7 clears.
Not great.
You want to, so they were 10 of 17 on clearing attempts. For those who are new to lacrosse, that's literally taking the ball from the defensive end to the offensive end. You generally want to be at 90% to be good. Most teams now are going to be between 85 and 90%.
Yeah.
As you can tell, 10 of 17 is nowhere near that number.
No, it is not.
So it was a really, really rough game for Syracuse in that department. Again, they just didn't have the ball on offense. So when they, try to do their offensive things, they do well. Like there were just not many opportunities for them.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the game, again, Syracuse was actually down 14-8 with about 2.5 minutes left to go. And then Syracuse starts to go on a run because Mullen starts to win faceoffs, which was huge.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, it's 14-12. Then with 30 seconds left, it becomes 14-13 because Finn Thompson scores a goal right on the crease. However, they review the call, and unfortunately, because Thompson, his glove and stick land in the area known as the goal mouth. You could think of it as like an interior crease in hockey.
Yep.
Because he landed in the goal mouth without getting pushed in by a UNC player, the goal was weighted off. And essentially the game ended there.
Unreal.
Yeah. As Paul Carcaterra said on the call, it is the right call, but a awful rule.
Yeah. Yeah. And we find that from time to time in a bunch of these sports, but
yes,
it always sucks when it happens to your team.
Yeah, exactly.
How's was Joey Spallino like found on a milk carton somewhere, or I haven't heard you mention his name at all.
He did have 5 assists.
Okay, just didn't feel like actually putting the ball in the net at any point.
Yeah, but I don't think based on how the game was going, this was an incredibly physical game.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's a reason for that. Spallina, as his game has matured, has always been more of as an assist guy nowadays.
Yeah.
Yes, the goals he can pop off with the goal scoring, but based on how that game was going, I don't think you necessarily quote unquote needed his goal scoring. 5 assists will be plenty enough. Like think about it in hockey terms.
Yeah.
If someone has 5 assists, it's incredible, and you could do the same for lacrosse.
Yeah.
So that's not on Spallina. The offense just didn't have the ball. You can't lose that many faceoffs, and also you can't fail 7 clears.
No, you really can't, and that's not.
Yeah,
it's quote unquote unacceptable.
Yeah.
In
the limited offensive possessions that Syracuse had, I mean, UNC was just straight up bullying them at times as well.
Not great.
No. So
no. Does that lines up Syracuse to play Notre Dame tournament?
Mm-hmm. So the way that this would have worked again is that this game was a battle for Syracuse to become the 1 seed in the NCAA tournament and the ACC tournament. Because they don't, they become the 4 seed and now play Notre Dame. If Syracuse had won, they would have been the 1 seed and they would have played Duke. Now, of course, Syracuse has lost to Duke and beaten Notre Dame, but I think if you ask most lacrosse fans, they would rather play Duke instead of Notre Dame this year.
Right.
I mean, Duke barely won a play-in game against Virginia. So,
that ended up what that ended up this week?
That was 10-9 in overtime.
Really?
Yes.
Huh. Okay.
So, again, Syracuse fans would much rather play Duke than Notre Dame, even though Duke did beat Syracuse already.
Yeah.
From what I have maintained, if you remember listening to me last week, is that Syracuse needs 1 more win to make the NCAA tournament. And that is still correct. I think in my mind, remember, there are only 8 teams that get at-large bids for the men's side in the NCAA tournament.
Right.
And the ACC does not get an automatic qualifying bid because they only have 5 teams in the conference.
What would it take to change that?
Money.
Is there any program that remotely would jump into that position?
Honestly, I think the closest team is Clemson.
Yeah. Just
because they have the money.
Want to throw money at whatever.
You have to have the money for it.
Yeah.
Like the most logical one would be BC or Pitt.
Right.
Closer to BC. But I doubt those schools have the money to add a men's program, especially the size of a men's lacrosse program. We got into this discussion in the comments earlier in News Magician as well. Because a commenter did bring up, like, what is it going to take for the NCAA to the ACC, I should say, to add a lacrosse team? And first of all, I said, of course, it's money, because not only that, you have to add the men's program, but you also have to add multiple women's programs if the men's lacrosse scholarships are going to not make you Title IX compliant.
Yeah.
So, and that's the reason why most schools aren't going to do it, because most schools are probably already like towing the line of Title IX compliancy in terms of the scholarships they're offering to even out men and women scholarships. So become Title IX compliant. Which is why you could say Clemson might be the closest one, because they've just added a women's team.
Yeah.
And you could say that might help them in terms of staying Title IX compliant if they were to consider adding a men's team.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all weird and speculative, but
yeah,
it'd be nice.
Yeah,
nice.
The other thing the commenter said is that he was also thinking it more as if another program with an existing men's lacrosse team would join the ACC. And
kind
unfortunately,
like Denver in the Big East type thing.
Yeah, Denver in the Big East, Johns Hopkins in the Big Ten. And unfortunately, I said the thing that I said is that I think the ACC in its current state would look for a member to join the ACC across all sports instead of adding a lacrosse only member.
Right.
And based on the recent conference expansions, I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
Yeah, like SMU, Cal, and Stanford couldn't have had a single lacrosse program between the three of them.
Cal and Stanford have women's programs.
They have women's programs, but yeah.
Speaking of Stanford women's lacrosse.
No. Women's lacrosse stopped existing last week. It's fine.
Yeah, because that's who they lost to last week for Syracuse.
Yeah. I was more implying like 2 weeks ago, because that would erase the 17-2 mess. And then I mean, Stanford kind of took them down pretty hard too, didn't they?
Yeah, Syracuse had a lead initially and then didn't score. Because as I've said for people who've listened to this podcast, it's Emma Ward and friends this year, because the scoring and offensive production drop off between Emma Ward and the rest of the team is massive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really goes to show how much the Olivia Adamson injury really affected this team.
Yeah, and it's that I feel like that's been a recurring theme with the women's lacrosse team for the last couple of years.
Yeah, but unfortunately for this year, they didn't have the margin for error, because while the women's team have had injuries in the past years, they've had offensive firepower to back it up still. This year, not as much. And the big thing is that there are only 14 at-large bids in the women's field. It's going to get real dicey for Syracuse on the women's side.
I can't imagine them making it on the women's side.
No, I don't either. So we might have to start searching the record books to see when's the last time neither men's or women's lacrosse program made the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, it's got to be a good long while, I'd assume.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, this has not been a great year for Syracuse lacrosse.
No, especially when we came in thinking it was going to be a very great year for them.
Yeah.
But again,
especially on the men's side, I think people are a little bit more lax on the women's side, but on the men's side, this was the team that was ranked number 2 in many preseason bowls.
Yep.
And it just hasn't turned out this way for the men.
Well, we'll see. We'll see where it goes, but you know, if they can squeak one out this week, then they may, survive in advance. But
the men are going down to Charlotte to play in the ACC tournament on Friday next week, and they desperately need that win against Notre Dame. That's essentially a playing game for Syracuse. They have to win that game to get in.
Right.
Well, we'll see if the men's lacrosse team does that. We'll probably have more football news at some point. We're really winding things down in terms of off-season talk right now for Syracuse. So the podcasts are going to be a little bit less frequent unless Fran decides to sign 50 transfers or something like that, which is not out of the question.
Also true.
But for that, we'll have to wait and see what comes of the rest of the offseason and the incoming football season as well. Hard to believe that the first game of Syracuse football is just a little bit over 4 months away.
Yeah. Things are moving fast.
Things are moving fast. Things are moving very, very fast. It will be very, very exciting to see what happens after that. We'll have a little bit of podcasts here and there throughout the summer when the news permits itself. But otherwise, thank you all for listening to the Disloyal Idiots podcast. We'll usually do these during the academic year at 8 p.m. on Sundays, so be sure to check in on the Disloyal Idiots Twitch or YouTube page, on the Fans First Sports Network YouTube and X page for the live stream. If you're listening on your podcast platform of choice, be sure to like, review, rate, subscribe, leave a comment so that we can trick the algorithm into expanding the Ottoman Empire. Going to be interesting for Syracuse on many athletic fronts. All we can say for that, though, is go Orange.
Go Orange.